Hello, Let's Do Video viewers. My name is David Maldo, and today we're going to talk about Team Chat. I'm joined with an old friend, Dominic Kent. Here we are in our lovely boardroom. And Dominic, can you please introduce yourself to our viewers?
Yeah, hey David, hey everyone.
Good
So
to see
I'm
you again.
Dom. Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah,
It's been almost a year, I think, since we did the first video, isn't it?
yeah. Time to do it again.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm Dominic Kent. I'm the content marketing director at Mio. Mio is a cross-platform integration that makes Teams, Webex, Slack, and now Zoom chat interoperable. So you can send messages cross-platform. My role is everything that is external communications. So I run the blog, I do the press releases, I run social media, all the good stuff like that.
And you do a great job. There's a lot of companies out there trying to make noise, but somehow I always manage to see your stuff in the feed. You know how to get it out there.
Yeah, it's nice when you Google something and it's your own content. It's an ego stroke, but also it says you're doing the right thing.
Yeah. And you have a good message to share. Team has become the way we live. Even before the pandemic, I was loving team chat. I love the flexibility, being able to message people when they're not working and know you're not disturbing them. They'll check it when they get there. Just the workflow of it, being able to kind of work while you're messaging and then upgrade to video when you need to get things done. I'm a big fan of team chat. And the biggest headache of team chat is I'm on Microsoft Teams and you're on Slack or you're on Zoom and I got to download this and now I have six chat apps open and they're all blinking at me and we're waiting for the world to give us something to bring it all together and you're like, hi, here we are. So I'm,
Yeah,
I'm a
we
fan.
we have a running joke at Mio that if anyone has if they have all of the apps open at any one time, then they've failed and they must share it in one of the channels, which is we're not eating our own dog food or drinking our own champagne, but normally it's for testing purposes.
Yeah, well, the rest of us, that's our life. We have it all open all the time. So you guys are leading the way and showing us how to get rid of some of the headaches of team chat. But we have you here today because you've updated the chart from last year, which everybody seemed to love, the comparison chart. So let's bring that up and dig in. Let me split you with it here. And it's going to be a little small to see for our viewers. We'll share a link at the end so you can see it full size. We're just going to kind of bring it up enough so we can talk about it. If you can't see everything perfectly, we're sorry about that, but we will share the full chart so you can get a good look at it. So where should we start, Dom?
Yeah, so I'll just introduce what we've got up each of the sides, I think, and then you can understand who we've got at the top. So left to right, we've got Microsoft Teams. These are in no real order either, by the way. Microsoft Teams, Skype for Business, Webex, which has now got a new logo compared to last year. I think they changed their logo like the day after we recorded the video, which
That's
is
right.
really annoying. We've then got Slack, we've got Zoom, and last year we included specifically Zoom chat, which has now been adopted by a lot more people. But there's no way you can talk about Zoom chat without talking about Zoom as a whole. We've then got Ring Central and we've got Google Chat. Google Chat, which is now kind of it's embedded into the Google Workspace plan, which they've shifted around a lot recently.
Yes.
I just wrote the state of workplace messaging report, and the only negatives are surrounding Google Chat were that it's hard to find. There's no SKU just for Google Chat. You get it with everything else. So if you want to focus on just Google Chat, then it's kind of hard to just get the chat bit without everything else. But these are all kind of the leading lights in the collaboration space in terms of number of users, revenue, all the good stuff. So that's why they're included. And then down the left-hand side, we've got a whole load of features that as we scroll down, we won't call them all out because we'll be here forever. But there's a whole load of features, and our graphic designer, Harriet, has done a great job of visualizing them so that you don't have to do a tick box exercise for every single platform. This should make your lives a lot easier.
Great. So what are our big areas? We have our collaboration section. I think I have a little bit cut off, but that's okay.
Yeah, so the first section is collaboration, which is all around, I guess, the audio and video experience, which is no longer just audio and video. It's screen sharing. It's can I control your screen? It's about virtual backgrounds. It's about whiteboarding. So the obvious thing to draw your attention to in the collaboration section is these big red crosses in the middle. So the only platform that doesn't have native virtual backgrounds is Slack. If you integrate Slack with Zoom, then you've got the Zoom virtual backgrounds, for example, but they're not a video platform, so we were never expecting them to have virtual backgrounds.
That
They
makes
might
sense
do.
to me. It seems like the other companies were video first and then brought in chat, and Slack was just, it was purely chat at first. So
Yeah,
not too
definitely. So
surprising.
that's why they've got these horrible red crosses in the middle, but that's definitely not their focus. And then there's another red cross in the bottom right as we look at it now, which is remote control of the screen. Google Chat, you do need a Chrome extension, but if you're using Google Chat, you're probably using Chrome, and you've probably been prompted to install the extension already.
Extensions aren't that. I don't like downloading a lot of extra programs and plugins, but Chrome extensions don't scare me. They don't seem to slow things down or anything. They're okay.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess the big takeaway from the big collaboration section is that they all do a lot of the, well, in fact, they all do the, I guess, headline things you want them to do it from a video conferencing platform. And then you really get into the nitty gritty and where they get differentiated as we go further down into everything, I guess we'll check out now.
Great. So this next section is the security section. Now, obviously, this is a hot topic. When the pandemic hit, we had, Zoom. Everyone started using Zoom, and everyone said, "Well, hold on a second. Is Zoom have the security we need for this sort of stuff?" And there was a whole big hubbub, and Zoom had to kind of lock down and update a lot of its security stuff. And everyone else in the industry was saying, "Let's take a look at our security." So I think in the industry, this might be the first section that people look at right away.
Yeah, I think IT managers and InfoSec managers and cybersecurity analysts and everyone certainly in larger firms will all be about this part of the comparison chart. I will say I don't think we do enough justice in the tick box. Security and collaboration is not a tick box exercise. There have been some really in-depth studies which try and break these platforms and try and hack these platforms, and they give you all the ins and outs. So if you're worried about a particular security element, and I think I said this last year as well when we did the video, then you really need to go in and inspect it for your specific security requirements rather than just what's on paper. There might be a tick box exercise where you do need InfoSec accreditation ABC or 27001, whatever it might be. And most people have that across the board now. Some vendors make it public. Some, if you ask them, they will say that they've got this and that. Or if you're a large enough customer, they might even go and get that specific accreditation for you. But this looks very pretty, this part of the chart, because there's a lot of green ticks. I don't think we need to specifically call out any of the red crosses because they're probably not everyone's requirement. They're kind of niche things. Like RingCentral don't have Cloud Security Alliance accreditation, but you might not need that, right?
Yeah.
You might need that if you're a Cloud Security Alliance partner, but there's a lot of green ticks. These platforms are considerably more secure than they were pre-pandemic. Like you mentioned, we've learned a lot.
Yeah.
But my strongest recommendation when it comes to security is to spend considerable time on what matters most to you rather than comparing all the ticks between the different vendors.
Yeah, this stuff is it's kind of high level stuff. I don't expect the typical customer to use this, not to use it, but to understand all this stuff. I really think big companies that have security needs, they have a security expert, and he or she will understand this stuff way better than we will, and they'll make sure to check off on your security needs. Most of security thing, I think, is user stuff. I really think it's not the platform, it's user behavior. Don't be sharing out your passwords. Don't turn off the waiting room. I was assisting someone with a podcast recently, and they just turned on Zoom and went to YouTube and said, "Here's a link to our Zoom room," and people started coming into the Zoom room and doing that thing. And it's like, look, Zoom gave us all these tools. We have to use them. You got to turn on your waiting room. You got to use your passwords. You got to don't just spam out links to the world. You have to have security practices. You can't just trust the green check marks to take care of you.
Yeah, exactly. I think the biggest one, other than sharing public link or sharing links in public that aren't necessarily public links, the biggest one across the last probably 18 months, where are we now? November 2021, maybe even more than 18 months, there's been end-to-end encryption, or what does end-to-end encryption actually mean per provider?
Yeah, that's a big topic of discussion.
Yeah. So when I reached out to everyone to update this chart, end-to-end encryption was the biggest. Everyone said yes, but everyone said yes, but.
Yeah.
So with both Microsoft tools, Teams and Skype for Business, you need to configure specific settings. I think Webex ranked highest on a recent study by I can't remember who it was now. It was a US government agency. Do you recall the study I'm citing? It was huge. I can't remember who it was. I'll come back to you on that one. But I think they ranked highest. They had the most ticks. Zoom's chat is encrypted outside of meetings, and I think Zoom acquired Keybase since we recorded the first version of this video, didn't they? So I think that's for meetings up to 200 participants is encrypted end to end, but then above 200, you need to have a long conversation with yours and their security analysts to make that a definite requirement.
Yeah. And just to kind of dumb it down for people who are like, what's all this encryption stuff? And this is going to be super oversimplified, but basically encryption scrambles up the message. So if someone is sitting outside my window and literally taps into my cable, they can pull it all, but it'll just be garbage numbers and data. They won't be able to watch me. They won't be able to hear me. And the idea of end-to-end means that if I'm talking to Dominic, there's no point in the middle. There's no server. There's no switch. There's no, the signal's going through we're in different continents, so things going to different places before it gets to us. There's no point where it gets unencrypted. It's encrypted with me, and you're the only one who sees it unencrypted. And that's very, very rare. Usually it's encrypted to the company. Like if we're using Zoom, it's encrypted to Zoom. And then in Zoom servers, they're able to do stuff with it. They're able to transcribe. They're able to allow us to share, all the advanced features. They need to unencrypt to do those advanced features. You can't transcribe something if you can't hear it. Then they re-encrypt it and send it to Dominic. So for a little period of time in the Microsoft Teams server, in the Zoom server, the Ring Central server, it's unencrypted for a second while they do those things and re-encrypt it. And if you trust the company and if you want those features, you're fine with that. Now, if you're Department of Defense, if you're something that, if you're at the FBI and you need no one can ever look at it, then you want true end-to-end, which means that even in Zoom, even in Microsoft Teams, even at those companies, they can't even look at it, even if they use all of their tools. They just can't. And then you lose some things. You might not get transcription. You might not get some of the bells and whistles, but you might be fine with that. So that's the difference between what we used to call end-to-end-ish, no one could see it except for a second in the middle, and true, what some people really want, which is no one, even my internet server, no one can see it except me and Dominic. That's the gold standard real end-to-end encryption, and that's super rare. It's still really rare.
Yeah, you just name dropped Department of Defense. I think it was a DoD report that I was struggling to remember that said that I think Webex had the most green ticks, but if you look through them all, how many vendors actually need all of that? I don't know. I hadn't heard a lot of the different. I'm no InfoSec expert, but I hadn't heard of a lot of the things that I thought I would have heard of going through that list. But Webex certainly ticked more than anybody else. But I guess you've got to be a real niche customer to have real top level security, like you mentioned.
Yeah, I don't need that.
Yeah, no, me neither. So the next section is around messaging and native team chat, which has probably evolved quite a while ago from instant messaging to what we know as persistent chat or asynchronous messaging. Mm-hmm. The first thing to call out on this section is the external chat element. So they all get green ticks for instant messaging, channel-based messaging within your own company. So intra-company collaboration. When you need to speak to somebody in another organization that might use this platform, then this is external chat. This is guest access. So there's guest access in Teams is a very hot topic at the moment because Teams are introducing Teams Connect, which will give a better guest access than we've got currently in November 2021. That's due to come out Q1, Q2 in 2022, so that you should be able to just share channel access with a guest user rather than having them log into your Teams tenant every time they want to chat to you, which is...
Oh, if I want to invite someone on Teams, I have to add them to my team or have them log into my... Oh, that's an extra step.
Yeah, exactly that. You don't want to be switching between tabs. That's a step. So they're going a step in the right direction with Teams Connect, which stems from Slack Connect. Slack introduced this in, I think, June 2020, where you could just have up to 20 organizations in one work in your shared channel. It was a shared channel, now it's a shared channel with 20 different organizations, if you have the need for 20 organizations. Myself, I think I've got a shared channel with 4 organizations, works just fine. I know a lot of the Mio sales team and customer success team, they've got like support channels with people that use Slack and Webex and Teams. They're all in the same channel. There's loads of people in there from different platforms, but they're obviously using the cross-platform integration. This is just
I have an issue with Slack Connect though, because I was recently invited to one for the first time. I'm in a lot of different old Slack channels, but I was invited to a new Slack channel for the first time in a year. And if you invite me to a Zoom channel, I just join the Zoom channel. And if you invite me to any of these Microsoft Teams, well, we discussed how that works. But with Slack, when I was invited to join a new client, I'm working with helping support a podcast. They made a Slack channel for their company, and they invited me. And I got this thing saying, you're joining with Slack Connect. You get 60 days free, and then you have to buy a Slack Connect account. Like, wait a minute, this is weird. If someone else invites me to join their chat, Slack sends me a bill? That's a bad feeling. If I invite you to my chat and Slack says to me, hey, if you want to invite more people to your chat, you got to upgrade. Well, of course, I'm okay with that. If Slack is just for my team and I need to invite other people, I need to pay an extra fee, that's fine. But if someone invites me, that's off-putting, because now I feel like if I want to invite you to my Slack, let's say I have a company Slack and I want to invite you, I'm basically sending you a bill. I invite you to my Slack, you're going to get a bill from Slack. That almost seems rude. I don't want to do that. I don't want to invite you to my Slack. So am I misunderstanding? Am I misusing Slack Connect, or is this something that other people are complaining about?
No, it's because you're using the functionality, right? It's optional. You don't have to use that functionality. If you don't want to use Slack Connect, you don't have to pay for it. You don't need to go to any of the paid plans. To use Slack Connect, you have to have access to one of the paid plans. It might be enterprise grade. It might just be the most basic tier. But that is a paid feature to connect to external organizations, except for your 60-day grace period that they gave you. And that's I guess Slack stems from internal use. So they see it as an optional extra. But it's worth it if you don't want to email everybody when you know they've got Slack. If you do an ROI exercise, how long is that? Hi, David. Hope you're well. When you just spoke to them and you could just message them on Slack asynchronously.
Yeah, email's like writing a letter. It's not a conversation, it's a message. Instant chat is like a conversation. So yeah, I have to be on chat, but maybe if I just think the billing should be different. If I'm the one who's inviting you to my chat, I should pay for it. It's like inviting someone to a party and then when they get there saying you have to pay for the pizza. Wait a minute, you invited me to the party. I'm not paying for the pizza. If you invite me to the party, you have the pizza ready. And the way Slack is connect up, the guest has to pay for the pizza. I'm just not. I'm not loving it. But I love the fact that we can connect. That's huge to me. But there's something about it that's not working right for me.
You've been to better parties than me, I think.
Yeah, that's true.
So outside of external chat, to move us on, the red crosses here are that Skype for Business doesn't have persistent chat, doesn't have message threads. You can't pin a message. Don't think you can pin a message yet anyway. But this is as Skype slowly transitions to Teams. Skype
Skype's
for Business
going away.
Skype for Business Online has now gone. Skype for Business on premise exists. I think 2024 is kind of the date that people are throwing around now, but that might change. But eventually there will be no more Skype for Business left, and I don't see much more investment going into fix any of these, because this is what Teams does, right? This is why Teams exists.
Yeah, I'm surprised that Skype has hung on for so long, because when Microsoft bought Skype, I said to myself, they're not buying a video platform, they're buying a user list. They bought Skype because they got 300 million emails of heavy video users. That's what they really wanted. So the fact that Skype still even exists is surprising to me. But yeah, Microsoft Teams is so much better. They need to move everyone over.
I loved the Skype interface. Well, no, I love the Skype for Business interface, but it is restrictive of all the other things you can do on Teams. There's not enough room in that little box, is there, to plug into your SharePoint and share your files and things like that, or search by keywords, which is the next part that we've come to.
It's not terrible, but it's just not as good as the new stuff.
No, exactly. So there's been some changes on this part of the chart. We've got 100 gig files supported in Teams now.
Nice.
We've also got extensive keyword search functionality. We can do more. We can search for a keyword in Teams, and it will look through Exchange, Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive. I think that's everything, rather than just the channel you're in. You can do it by just channel, obviously, but that's increased specifically, not specific. That's increased exponentially. We've also got Zoom does kind of the same. You can search across the whole of your Zoom. So if I've sent a message to you in Zoom chat, rather than having to scroll through everything now or searching through one particular DM, I can go in and just find that anywhere by searching my one keyword, which I couldn't do before. I can also now choose how long I want to store that message on the cloud or just on my local device. So if we've just been testing it out, for example, then we'd get rid of that rather than using up all of our cloud storage, which you couldn't really do before.
I didn't realize that Zoom is only half a gig file share. That's compared to Teams, that's a huge difference. 100 gigabytes, half a gigabyte. I share big files all the time, so I love being able to share big files. I use Discord a lot, and they have a tiny file share because it's not a business tool, and I can't share anything in it. It's so frustrating.
Yeah, I think the first time we tried to share this chart over Discord, it didn't work, did it?
Yes, that's right.
So if you look at the common denominator between the two biggest here, you've got terabyte and gigabyte in Google and Microsoft Teams. These also have document platforms underneath them, so Google Drive and SharePoint. So I'm sure that's why these are higher than someone like a Slack or a Zoom, which doesn't have that underlying infrastructure.
That makes sense.
So the next section is notifications, which is all green. Yes, you can get loads of notifications. You can customize them all as much as you want. You can get them on email. You can not get them. You can set up your own. You can mute the channels you don't want to be involved in. Pretty much everyone does everything nowadays. And my advice is just to customize it to what makes you most productive. For example, in Slack, I will have no active notifications on because I know that I'm in Slack often enough to just see them pop up with the white dot. I don't necessarily need them to be proactive. I'm a passive notification checker. Yeah, I know I'm going to be in there for however many hours a day. So I don't also want them on my phone. I don't want them interrupting me if I'm watching a webinar or whatever. But if you don't work like that, or if you've got really important channels, or if somebody mentions you, then there are loads of things you can do to customize how, when, how often, which rules you can apply so that you get the right notifications at the right time.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't always have Slack open, but I'm in Slack. I'm in several Slack channels, so I make sure that I get an email from Slack when I miss something. Zoom chat, I usually have Zoom open. I don't want emails from Zoom because I see it right there because I'm looking right at it. What I love about this is all the green. Usually if I see so much green in a chart, I say, well, maybe we don't need to ask these questions because there's no differentiation, but we do need to ask these questions. We do learn something from it. The industry has gotten how important notifications are. Last year when we had this conversation, I think I spent way too much time talking about how it's really all about the notifications, and setting it up right can make your team just way more productive, getting the information the way you want to get it. I'm not going to redo the conversation, but I'll just reemphasize that this is huge to me.
Yeah, I think so. I've written 2 articles recently, one on video fatigue, which I guess was Zoom fatigue, but people then realized it's not just Zoom, video fatigue and how you can get around that. But I think it's not just video fatigue, which is why I wrote the second article on notification overload. And the two combined, when you've been on video calls all day, the last thing you want is 20 notifications that you've got to check because you know that if you miss one of them, you might miss an important one.
Yeah.
But in reality, if you're more productive by going in and checking them yourself proactively, then all you've done is disrupt your current workflow, which is a big word at the minute, isn't it? It's like getting your workflow as streamlined as possible. You don't need those intrusive notifications. They're still going to be there when you go and check them in your time. It's all about what's right for you.
Exactly.
So moving on from notifications, we've got a big section on guest access. The biggest change here, I think, which is going to change again, is the limitations and permissions in Microsoft Teams. Steve Goodman, Microsoft MVP, has kindly explained everything in here, which I can make a little bit bigger if anyone wants to see that, and I'll catch up. So guest-only access to channels, meetings, files, and some Teams applications. There's then a separate setting for external sharing, which Teams admins can enable so they can share different things cross-tenant. So from let's do videos tenant to Mio's tenant. But shared channels, or Teams Connect as it's going to be called, will give everybody more access without having to switch tenants. So that's going to be a big boost for everyone using Teams in an intercompany level, or it might even just be like a contractor level. I'm a contractor on a few of my clients' Microsoft Teams tenants, so I have to go in there and switch. So the ideal way would be to have one login, and I can see all my clients in there, right? That would be.
It makes sense to me that the Microsoft is a little bit more complicated because it's not just a chat application. It's tied into everything else in your world. It's tied into your Excel and your all your Microsoft platforms, and so obviously it can't just be guests are in or out. It has to be, okay, they're in, but what can they see? Can they see part of your world? Can they just see what's in the channel? Can they see the whole world? So I'm not surprised that there's a lot of text there and that's a little bit complicated. It has to be.
Yeah, and it will change when Teams Connect is available. But there's also the underlying infrastructure, right? So like I mentioned with SharePoint and OneDrive, there's more to share. So it has to be more complicated.
Exactly.
The key one, I guess, for Mio is this bottom line here in guest access. So it's the ability to chat with users on other platforms. So Teams, today you can install Mio and connect to Slack or Webex, and we're currently in beta for Zoom chat in November 2021. Skype for Business, you can coexist with Microsoft Teams natively. Webex is much the same as Teams. When it comes to other platforms, you can connect to Slack, Teams, and Zoom chat via Mio. It's also got its own native functionality with Cisco Jabber, the previous messaging tool, and Pigeon. I don't know anyone using Pigeon myself, but it's one that Webex highlighted, so I guess they've got some people doing that. Slack is the same integration as Teams, Webex, and Zoom chat, and then the next column is Zoom chat, referring to the same Mio integration. Don't currently support RingCentral or Google Chat. There is a lot of talk around Google Chat at the minute because there's a lot of Google Drive users who are now using everything within the Google suite. I think they topped something like, I think it was 20 billion logins to Google Drive in 1 month, something like that, a crazy stat. So there's a lot of noise around Google Chat at the minute, but this line at the bottom is what Mio currently supports today for cross-platform usage. And then we've got a section on integrations to the wider world. So I think all of these are now increased on last year. Maybe RingCentral was the same, but there's a plus. Zoom has probably been the biggest in the integration space in the last year, or since we recorded this video. They've announced, I think they've got $100 million funding for their Zoom app library. So they've launched it, and now there are 1,500 or more integrations now with Zoom. I think when they initially launched it, the beginning of the year, maybe it was last year, I think there was 20. There was 20 headline integrations, and now they've put all the investment into it, invited everybody in to integrate, and it's almost at a point where you would consider Slack were the kings of integration into third-party apps, but Zoom integrating to nearly as many now.
Yeah, they're definitely catching up.
Yeah, but as you can see, Slack still are 2,300 plus, and that's growing every day, right? Everyone wants to integrate with Slack because Slack have always had the most integratable platform, I think.
Oh yeah, I remember 3 or 4 years ago when Slack was the undisputed king and everyone else was just coming up with their chats. Everyone had a Slack integration. Everyone on this list, Zoom had a Slack integration. I mean, everyone had a Slack integration. So it was a rush to get your app integrated with Slack, and now everyone's looking at Zoom.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think everyone's looking simultaneously at all of the apps because there's so much cross usage in companies and between companies, so that it's probably one of the most important criteria to look at when you're evaluating platforms as a developer, as a customer, whatever it might be. It's, can we integrate with XYZ? And the answer, I think, lies in the next line, which is everyone's got an open API now. You just need to be a customer of some sort to get access to the platform.
Yeah, that makes sense. And especially when you consider, if you talk to customers, I think it'd be very rare to talk to someone who says, we only use one platform. We use Microsoft Teams and nothing else. No one says that. It's always, usually we're using 3 or 4 things, but it's at the very least, it's we're mostly using this, but we're also using this a little. So there's always going to be more than one. So integrations and APIs and all these things that connect things together are just so important.
Yeah, I've got some first-hand data that I can share just to back that statement up as well, I think. So this was from 2019, Mio found out via independent research that 91% of companies used at least 2 messaging apps. So
Not
the
surprising.
integration aspect is done there. I recently interviewed the CEO of Viopta, who said that over 50% of Viopta's customers are using Microsoft Teams and Zoom specifically, and that way more than that use at least 4 applications across their whole customer base. So if anything, it's grown.
And if Viop is sharing numbers, I trust them because they are numbers people. That's a
Yep.
data analytics number. I love the
Yep.
Viop people, but yeah, when
If
they
you want
have
analytics,
numbers,
you
they
Google.
got the spreadsheets to back it up.
Yeah. Yeah. If there's anyone you can trust with your analytics, it's Viopta for sure.
Yeah.
So moving on from integrations, we've got the interoperability section, which is kind of becoming the same phrase as integration, I think. Everything needs to be interoperable with each other in order to integrate, right? So it's much of the same. There are some red crosses in that you can't natively interoperate with these platforms, so you do need a third party. So with Microsoft Teams, you can natively integrate, you can natively connect to Skype for Business. So you can use one of the various methods to talk from platform to platform. With Webex, you can still support Jabber and BroadSoft UC1. If you're a former BroadSoft customer that's coming to the Webex ecosystem, you can talk between platforms that way natively, but you can't talk to platforms outside of that ecosystem natively. That's probably never going to exist, right? Nobody wants you to freely talk to other platforms without installing something or doing something technical. Otherwise, everywhere would just be one big platform.
Yep, exactly. And you could just buy the competitors. No reason to buy from me if my competitor will connect to everything just as well as I do.
Yeah, exactly. The final section then is just a little bit on the freemium model. Everybody offers a freemium model, so you can check out, try before you buy. That's never going to go away, I don't think.
No, they have to.
Yeah, I think Webex have come around to that more recently. I think you can now get full fat Webex for free for a period of time, or forever, I think, with up to 100 participants in meetings. You can just try Webex. Webex have moved to a proper SaaS model now. I've interviewed a lot of people at Webex over the past few weeks, and they're all fully committed to Webex as a service, I guess, rather than historical Cisco of hardware components with a bit of a UC client on the top.
Yeah, well, the market has changed for them. The market used to be, they have a million or billion customers, a zillion customers that buy their routers and buy their switches and buy their network and buy their, buy all this other stuff from them. And hey, Webex is a great product. Get Webex from us as well. Okay, just add it to the shopping cart. And now it's not just added to the shopping cart. It's all like, well, wait a minute. We could try Zoom, we could try Teams, we could try all these other things. Can we try Webex? No, you can't try. You have to buy it. Well, that's not going to work. It's just not going to work anymore. Now when I can try your competitors for free, and when your competitors are getting such great press, like I'm hearing a lot of good stuff about Zoom, hearing a lot of good stuff about Microsoft Teams, hearing a lot of good stuff about Ring Central. I'm not just going to buy something when I can try everything else. So they were forced into it. And they shouldn't be afraid of it. They've been putting a lot of money into developing. Webex today is so different from Webex 2, 3, 5 years ago.
Oh yeah.
Hey, let's get it out there. So I've always been a fan of the freemium. I think not for every industry, but for messaging, chat, video, freemium really works. You gotta let people try it out for not just a test call, but for a few weeks or a few months to make sure it works. Like you said, workflows everything, and these solutions all have different workflows. You gotta find the one that works with your team.
Yeah, and that's exactly what all of the platforms have come around to realize, I guess, in the last few years, but Webex specifically over the last 12 months, I think they've really been singing that song that, hey, we are a genuine SaaS player. We're not just what you knew us for historically. And the same is true, I think, for being open and interoperable, because they are now a genuine cloud service. They recognize that they do need to interoperate with all of their competitors, really. And everyone that I've interviewed recently at the C-level has said that we would rather interoperate with somebody like a Zoom or a Teams and make our customers happy, because if we have happy customers, then we win the business. rather
Yeah.
than shut it all down and make it really, really troublesome for our customers to use our platform. And then you lose them to the competition. So the mindset's been switched, I think, from it's our platform or nobody else to, okay, you're going to use our platform, but how do we incorporate everybody else?
Yeah, and it's tough. It's a tough problem because the way that video developed compared to audio, audio we had one phone company. I'm old enough that I was actually alive during the time when we had one phone company and we had one dialing system and everyone had a phone number. And then when that was broken up into a lot of companies, they kept that system. And it doesn't matter whether I'm AT&T or Sprint or Mint or Verizon or any of them. My phone number is my phone number. Your phone number is your phone number, and we can call each other. And video didn't develop that way. There was no Ma Bell of video. There was all these different video companies. And I've gotten them in I've been at Infocom where I've been on a panel where we had the CEOs of some of these big video companies, and I said, hey, you guys sitting here right now, men and women sitting here right now, if I locked you in a room and said you're not allowed out till you solve it, you could solve it. You could solve it. You could make a general directly where we can all call each other. I can get on my Zoom and get on my Microsoft Teams and call someone on Ring Central, and they're all like, David, we're not doing that. We're just not going to do that. It's not good for our businesses. That's not the world we're in now. So if they're not solving it, guess what? I guess Mio has to solve it, or Interop has to solve it, or APIs have to solve it. We have to connect them somehow. So it's unfortunate, but that's the world we're in. We got to solve it. And look at all those red X's. I mean, this is of everything else in your chart. The chart was so much green, so much happy green, and here we have all these red X's. This is our remaining problem, I think.
And this is after I've said that everyone's come around to it. So
Yeah,
everyone's
this is after it got better.
Yeah, everyone is talking about it. A lot of it is still in development. A lot of it still requires a third-party app like Mio, or in the video space, you've got people like Pexip who've been around forever, kind of pioneering video interop. Poly do a lot of interop on their devices across platforms as well, so you can have one Poly device for Teams and Cisco or Zoom, whatever it might be. But when it comes to native interop, there's still a lot of work to be done.
Oh yeah, and it may never get there.
Watch this space.
Exactly. All right, so where can we? I think I think we did a pretty good job of sharing this. I tried to zoom in and out, so not too much so it's annoying, but people could see you and see the chart. But I think people need to see a really good view of the chart. Where can they download this from or view it?
Yeah, so I'm sure you'll put it in the description. Put it on your website. It's on. It lives on our Medium page, which is not too easy to find, but I share it on a regular basis. So if you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm Dom Kent. Company Twitter is @Mio. And yeah, best way to access it quickly will be in the description down here.
Great. All right. Well, thanks so much. Anything else we want to share on chat before we wrap up? Any big picture things that we learned from this chart compared to last year?
I think that the biggest takeaway is that security has been taken more seriously. And interop is being taken more seriously. So I think next year's one, this interop section at the bottom will look a little greener, less aggressive, less negative, like security does now. I think that's what's happened, and that's where it's going. Those are my predictions that we'll review in a year and see if we got it right.
And I think as consumers, we need to start saying, is there more that we want? It looks like we're getting a lot of green check marks. Is this it? Are we at the end game? Have we gotten everything we want? Or do we need to come back to our providers and say, hey, okay, you've got our first wave of green check marks. Here's the next wave of things we want. We don't just want more to want more, but are there? I wonder if the future of chat is, this is it, Nirvana, we've reached it, or are we just getting started?
I think there's some core chat functionality that each vendor is working on making better. So if we look at just chat, I think threads are being taken more seriously across the board. So Slack pioneered message threads. Teams are getting better. Webex have made a commitment to making it more streamlined. Even Discord, I don't know if they've introduced them yet, but they announced they were introducing threads. So I think rather than one big splash of chat messages on your screen, it will be more staggered and organized. I know a lot of people don't like using message threads because they feel like their messages go all over the place. But I think if you drive the right behavior and you show people how to use threads in the correct manner, then it's much more organized than just one big splash of messages, like I said. And then I think in the wider space aside from chat, we've got things like VR and mixed reality and virtual reality. There's a lot of metaverse conversations going on at the moment. I don't know if that's necessarily driven by what customers want, but it's certainly becoming available. Somebody's mentioned it somewhere. I haven't seen too much of a positive response just on social media and in community forums, but it certainly works for those people that do want to use it.
Now, I think we might want to come back and do another chat about best practices for threads, because threads are driving me crazy. I love them. I'm not like you said, some people are just anti-thread. When they're used correctly, wow, can they clean up a chat space? But I think some people just don't know what they're for and are using them for everything. And I get in a conversation where I have to click every time I ask a question, I have to click a thread response. It's like, look, you could just say not everything has to be a thread. People who thread everything make it harder. So there's definitely some best practices, when to thread, when not to thread. And it's interesting how the different solutions use threads differently. On some platforms, the thread's right there. On Slack, there's a threads thing. You have to click the threads at the top, and I'm not used to it, so I miss it. I'll be like, why didn't you answer this? I'll be like, I did in a thread. I'm like, oh, yes, I see it now. That was my fault.
That I think that comes down to managing your notifications as well, because you might want to unfollow a thread because you're no longer involved, and then that's queuing up your notification, well, blocking up your notifications when, like you said, you've missed the one that you're actually waiting for because you're subscribed to all the threads. It's all about those behaviors. And I think if you spend enough time, or force your users, I guess, to learn how to use this functionality up front, they will enjoy the threading experience, the messaging experience, whatever it might be.
It makes everything better.
We are humans. We don't like change. So there needs to be protocols and practices to make it as easy as possible to do it without feel like we're going back to school or learning how to send a message.
Yeah, the world needs a little help managing these threads because a lot of people are just doing it wrong.
Yeah, I've written a couple of posts around Slack threads specifically, and I co-authored something with Dan, who is the co-founder of Leveris, who are you can go like several layers deep in a thread. So maybe we can include those in the description as well for people that are overloaded with threads.
Yeah, I definitely want to read them because I'm getting a little overloaded myself.
I'll send those to you.
Great. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us, and thanks for sharing this chart. If anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat, and we'll put all the links that we talked about in the description below. Thanks so much for being here.
Cheers, David. See you again.